Uh-oh.
We're live, I think. Okay, everyone is here and alive and not in an airport or a lounge. Well, except perhaps those of you viewing uh at home. Maybe some of our viewers are in lounges and airports. Still doing the SAS challenge since you technically have until the end of the year. So before we get into our agenda for this finale of the Million Mile Madness, um, Tim, can you recap the challenge? What this challenge is, before we dive into our individual recaps?
So this challenge was Greg, Nick, and Steven, who are the three dashing gentlemen with collars. Uh, they there was an SAS Scandinavian. Does anybody remember what the last S stands for? Scandinavian
Was it
Airlines.
system?
Yes, there we
There we
go.
go.
Oh, good job. Well done.
Good.
Recently joined Sky Team, so they ran a promotion whereby if you would complete travel on 15 different Sky Team partners and credit those flights to SAS before December 31st, 2024, you would get 1,000,000 SAS Euro bonus points. So Stephen and Nick and Greg all did this challenge, and they did it in such a way that we made it a frequent miler challenge called Million Mile Madness. Now, because it's a challenge, it's obviously competitive and there's scoring involved. So we used the SAS initials to say that we were going to rank these guys by speed, affordability, and style. What was it originally before it was style?
What
It
was
was
it? I can't
Sav
remember.
Wonder.
Savviness or
Savvy,
something
yeah, it
like
was
that.
something, and then somebody said, "What about style?" I'm like,
Swank.
"Oh, yeah, that's really great." Um,
Yeah,
so
something
those
not
are
as
the three
cool.
main components. They are weighted equally with an audience vote that we will reveal at the end of this evening's live stream. And then there's also some opportunities for extra credit that we'll go through. And the winner will be immemorialized or memorialized, or hopefully not memorialized, will be honored with being the sassiest frequent miler team
Hmm.
member of
Hmm.
Might have to make
2024.
some custom hats.
Might have to make some custom hats.
So I hope everyone's been following along on Instagram so that you totally have memorized these crazy itineraries that all three of these guys have been on over the last 2 weeks. But because it's very hard to remember either way, we're going to do some brief wrap-ups for you. Not as lengthy as we've done before, because you can go to our Instagram and watch the highlight reel or the reels. But Greg, we would like you to answer a few questions to help kind of summarize your trip.
Sure.
First things first. We couldn't help but notice that everyone seemed to kind of focus on, no one seemed to go after all three of those categories, speed, affordability, and style. It seemed like all of you kind of honed in on two and threw one out the window. So can you talk about how much of a strategy you really had around that, and how do you feel about that strategy now?
Sure. Yeah. No, it was 100% deliberate. When I was first planning for the whole thing, I actually was thinking of competing mostly on speed and affordability. And it was actually at a presentation in Chicago where I was talking to people about how I was focusing on that and to every single person in the audience said, no, you should be going for style. And as I thought about it after that presentation, I was like, you know what? Going for style instead of affordability will be a lot more fun. and so I went all in on that direction and what focusing on speed and style allowed me to do by not focusing as much on affordability, it let me um, pick flights that I wouldn't have been able to pick if I was focused on just on affordability because I could actually, uh, I could get somewhere faster because maybe that one Air France flight I needed was $250 at the time I needed it, or $75 if I was willing to wait a day or two. And that made a big difference in how it was possible to plan, especially around speed. Speed was important to me because I wanted to be back in time. So I left on a Friday. I wanted to be back on by the following Sunday night at the latest because I had some family engagements and things that I wanted to get back to. So that was important to me to focus on speed. And then by adding in style, it made it possible to have a lot of fun. At the same time, I didn't sacrifice like affordability entirely in that the cash component I kept very reasonable. I think it was less than Nick's cash component, not a whole lot more than Steven's, but I spent way more in points, and that's what added up to the total being a lot higher than the other guys on affordability.
All right. So now that begs the question, why do you think you should be the winner? Why was that the right strategy for a winner?
Well, yeah, it just worked out so well. I had a plan that involved, going very quickly around the world, with also minimal distance flown. I wanted to not fly, back and forth too much. And you'll see I flew a couple thousand miles, fewer miles than the other guys. And I wanted to do it quickly, and I wanted to do it in style. And as you saw, I had a lot of great style elements, starting with a Equinox massage, a helicopter ride. Eddie had first apartments with wine tasting on board, and several other things that were really cool. And I also had I had a big gamble because the biggest style element of all for my plans were to fly a Japanese airline home in first class so that I could buy a bottle of the 100-year Hibiki whiskey, which is only available to purchase. This particular blend is only available to purchase if you're flying a Japanese airline in first class. And I thought, what could be more stylish than that to come home that way? And also it was especially important to me because our team has a background with Hibiki, because during our Party of Five challenge, we all taste tested whiskeys and love the Hibiki on ANA first class. And so my secret plan was to not just go home with this bottle of Hibiki, but next time we're all together in person to actually break it open at that event. And so it was a big gamble because there wasn't first class award space open when I started booking flights. There wasn't first class award space open when I started flying flights. There wasn't first class award space open the day that I finished flying all the SAS airlines on the Friday. It finally opened on Saturday for Sunday, for my Sunday flight home. And so, yeah, I think I should win because I had an incredible trip with a perfectly executed plan. I mean, was there an element of luck to it at the very end there? Absolutely, but that's part of what makes a winner win. So
Yeah, kind of crazy that no one missed any critical flights. Although
mhm.
we'll get to that later. So Greg, curious, um, that sounds like, I mean, that was maybe the grand finale of your trip was the Hibiki whiskey, but I'm curious what the trip highlight was for you. What was the most fun part of it for you?
So yeah, it's tough because one of the parts that was just super fun was the fact that Nick, Stephen, and I all happened to be on the same SAS flight to Copenhagen, and then we got to go out in Copenhagen together, and so that was so cool. But I think I have to give the highlight to the Etihad first class where I did wine tasting on board. Taste tested all of their white wines first, and then their red wines, and just actually that whole experience from start to finish on Etihad first class was really just totally bucket list worthy, and it was everything I'd hoped for in the flight. It was that good.
Nice. That's a pretty good sell. All right. Tim, can you walk us through Nick's questions?
Yes. So Nick,
Yes, sir.
you uh, seem to, of the three categories, you seemed to have a somewhat laissez-faire attitude towards speed, whereas you were really trying to compete in what seemed to be compete in affordability and in style. How do you feel about that strategy now? Do you think that was the right strategy? Do you wish you would have competed on all three? Do you wish you would have picked different things to compete on? Or are you feeling pretty good about it?
Well, I think it's kind of a mischaracterization to say that I didn't compete on speed. Now, I ended up a few days behind these guys. I will admit that, but I flew something like 33,500 miles over the course of 13 actual days, if you count 24-hour periods. So that's an average of about 2,500 miles a day. So about a transcon every day, and still managed to do a lot of stuff along the way. So I don't know if I would say that I threw speed out the window. I think I was not quite as reckless on speed, perhaps, as my competitors were, in the sense that
So speed wasn't out the
if,
window; it was kind of in the trunk, though. So fair.
but,
It was underneath the pillow you were sitting on.
I mean, the speed with which Stephen and Greg finished this was very impressive. But had either of them missed like one flight, they would have wasted a bunch of frequent milers' money, right? So, because there would have been this domino effect of like flight after flight. So I guess I built in a little bit more cushion. I don't think that the characterization that I did it slow is necessarily accurate. Slower for sure. Luckily, everybody made their flights except for me, of course, which I'm sure we'll come back to later on.
Ironic.
But but anyway, so no, would I do it differently? I don't think so. I had a pretty good trip, so I think between the number of days I traveled, the number of things I saw, and the amount of time I spent out, as compared to the amount of money I spent overall, I think actually I'm pretty satisfied with my entry into the foray here. So, win, lose, or draw, I feel like I put together a pretty good trip that I feel pretty confident about.
So before we'll ask you the same question we asked Greg about why should you be the winner. But before I have one question, pardon the mischaracterization. You weren't throwing speed out the window. You were being careful. I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So since you were being careful and you were the only person that missed a flight, should that be considered by the viewers, by the audience, by Carrie and I? Should we knock you down for that?
Well, so here's the thing. The flight that I missed did not change any of the rest of my flights.
Okay.
So it didn't affect any of my trip, funny enough. But so the flight, for anybody who missed the flight that I missed, that was way at the beginning. So if you weren't watching right from the get-go, then you could have missed that. So as I got to the airport for my first flight to kick this off, I got the notification that my I don't know, second or third or fourth flight was about to take off in a few minutes. And I realized I booked for the wrong day. I booked my Copenhagen to Bucharest flight for the wrong calendar day. So I had to rebook that. So that did cost something. There's no doubt about that. But it wasn't that much more. I think it was maybe another 80 or $90 or something that it cost. So luckily, it didn't cost me any time or other flights. It was just a wrong calendar day booking that I was luckily able to rebook for not that much more. So it didn't work out to be too horrible. But yeah, I mean that definitely that hurt. I wish I hadn't made that mistake. That's for sure. Wish I had been a little bit more careful with my spreadsheet.
So
Equally
why do you
careful
think,
to my timing.
so why do you think so? Okay, so given that you were careful, your spreadsheet may have been a little off, but besides that, why should you win instead of Greg and Steven?
Well, because I think I completed the mission in the best combination. of the three, right? So I wasn't quite the speediest, but I think, reasonably speedy. I wasn't the most affordable, but I think when you look at bang for the buck in terms of the number of destinations that I visited and the number of nights that I spent in hotel beds, I think I was, again, very competitive. And when you look at style, if you look at style beyond just the award flights, which, I mean, I did have some good award flights. I did do Etihad first class apartments. I did Qatar Q or not QCs, Qatar business class, and got to enjoy the business class lounge. So I had some similar elements to Greg's luxury. But then, along with that, I had the style of going to see the Terracotta Army in Xi'an and the Gulangyu Island in Xiamen and the Vienna Christmas markets and my day at Therm Bucharest. So I think I added in a number of local elements along the way that I think were interesting and maybe stood out a little bit over what Greg and Stephen did in the places that they visited. Now, I mean, that said, it's hard to beat that Hibiki walk off there. So, so it was a very good finish from Greg, and that's a tough one to compete with. But I think overall, yeah, I feel like my trip stands out as being the one that visited the most places and did the most things, along with earning hopefully the million miles.
No, it's
All
good.
right.
So before we go further and move towards declaring who the winner was, is there any whiskey that you've bought for Carrie and I?
I will hold the
Champagne?
glass as Greg pours.
Oh, okay.
Sure, you got
Want
you
to make
something
sure.
at the Christmas market, though.
Okay.
I did.
We'll
As long
see.
as you
We'll
like
see.
jewelry. And Sam doesn't mind sharing.
All right. All right. So, Stephen, we want a little recap from you as well. So, by the looks of it, it seemed that you were focusing more on speed and affordability. Can you talk about that? How intentional was that strategy? And what did you decide to throw out the window, if anything?
Um, in theory, I decided to throw out the window the style just because I figured that affordability was, I guess, my most important feature. But then I also thought that I would be able to compete on speed as well because I figured I'd be a little more willing to have some shorter layovers, some potentially more uncomfortable flights than the other two guys. So I figured, okay, if I'm going to be doing that, then I won't necessarily be competing on style. Plus, during that time, I knew that I'd be super busy and having to work and stuff. So I didn't plan my trip around being able to visit all these sites intentionally, like up front. I did get a little bit unlucky when I had time in Bucharest. There was like raining and sleeting and stuff that day, and so the walking tour that I was planning on doing meant that I ended up missing out on that. But affordability wise, I feel like I did really well. Like Greg spent 60% more than me. Nick was like 20% more than me or something like that. And then I didn't end up competing on speed as well as I thought. So I thought I was going to be like 4 days ahead of Nick and 2 days ahead of Greg, but Greg finished faster than me. I ended up setting off about 18 hours earlier than I necessarily needed to, because I could have taken, because I left on the Thursday at midday. I could, in theory, have left on Friday morning, but that would have made things really tight with trying to get to New York to be able to make the overnight flight. And so, if my flight from Vegas to New York was delayed, I would be completely hosed because there would basically be no other way to get to New York in time for that flight. And so that would have annihilated my plan up front. So even if I had done that, I think Greg would have beaten me by like 2 hours or something like that. And so I'm glad that I didn't make that risk in the end, just because I wouldn't have ended up winning on speed. But I still did pretty well on speed, I feel like. But affordability wise, yeah, that was definitely my selling point, I think.
And why do you think that you should win?
Because I feel like my trip was the most realistic as to if somebody else was going to be trying to do this million Euro bonus millionaire challenge, that I feel like people would be more likely to go with what I did because they'd be doing it on their own dime. And so we were all fortunate that Greg was paying for our trips, and so I was trying to be super careful with his funds, but we didn't have to worry so
Appreciate
much.
that.
I feel like if I was doing it and just paying out of pocket and using all my own miles for the entire trip, I'd want to be doing it as cheaply as possible because otherwise, what's the point in earning a million miles if you're going to be spending a whole ton of money in order to do that? So that was my biggest focus, while also trying to do it as quickly as possible because a lot of people aren't going to be able to take off a whole ton of time to be able to do it. So being able to travel all around the world, fly 15 airlines within 10 days, I feel like was a pretty good achievement and realistic achievement because I was also able to get some work done in that time and things like that during some longer layovers at airports. So I feel like, yeah, mine had realism to it.
Ah, it's hard not to appreciate that practicality there in this
And
community, I
but
feel
yeah.
like.
But
What are you
I would say as well though that I did have style in there. So I did have some business class flights. I had
right?
some really nice hotel stays. I had a 100% suite upgrade success rate. So it wasn't all miserable. Went to 15 different priority pass lounges in addition to a whole bunch of other lounges from the business class flights. So I had a reasonable amount of style. Certainly nowhere near what Greg and Nick did, but it ended up being a far more comfortable trip than I was anticipating ahead of time.
It was not thrown out the window.
Correct.
Um, so I'm curious, what was the highlight of the trip for you? What was your favorite part personally?
That's tricky. Like Greg mentioned, I think Copenhagen was one of my favorite parts, just because we all got to hang out for a few hours. But I think my favorite part of all was my last minute decision to fly from Saudi Arabia to Indonesia on
Hmm.
Garuda in business class. Because I'd booked economy class on Saudia, I'd completely missed during that booking process because it was really frantic at the time because some other stuff had happened. I was going to end up in an economy flight for like 10 or 11 hours. And I didn't really realize that till I got to the airport that it was going to be quite that long. And after, what, 5 or 6 days of traveling at that point, I was like, that does not sound too appealing. And so, something like 2 or 3 hours before my flight, I had a quick look for reward availability, found a decent business class flight on Garuda, and so I was able to fly in comfort. So I think that was what helped keep me going because I think that if I had taken that like 10 or 11 hour flight in economy, that might have made things a little more uncomfortable for the upcoming like 4 or 5 days traveling around Asia without any hotel nights.
You just wanted to slip a little of the flying by the seat of our points in there since you weren't
Correct.
a competitor in that last time. Awesome. All right. So I think that summarizes everybody's trips. So Tim, walk us through who won the Best of Hotel award.
Well, so before that, there's actually a couple categories we should probably quick cover. We had several, Carrie's very, very kind. I said that the guys should have no bonus point opportunities whatsoever. And in fact, should have a 5-day limit to complete the challenge. But Carrie said, oh, no, 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 we have to give them.
That's why we're good cop, bad cop.
So here we go. But so we did have some extra point earning opportunities. And let's go through a few of those before we start with the best of awards of the trip. First of all, we had some some extra, what we referred to as extra credit opportunities.
Mhm.
And these were opportunities to get additional points that each person had the opportunity to get. So it wasn't a winner take all. Each person could get a total of 10 extra points by doing these 5 things. So let's quick go through what they were and who did them. The first one was what we called Head to the Hilton. Hilton gave us some free night certificates for our Grand Reader Prize that we'll be unveiling later. We'll have more details on that. So we thought we'd, make them a part of this whole competition. And we were going to give 2 points to each contestant that stayed at Hilton. All 3 of you did that. So you all got 2 points. We had a reinventing Reyes business class, and for Reyes business class, for folks who don't know, that was in the last annual challenge that we did this year, called "Flying by the Seat of Our Pants." Sorry, by the seat of our points.
Close enough.
Nick trademarked, and I actually think it's now finally been approved. Reyes business class, which was being an economy but having a whole row to yourself. So we wanted each person to show us some way of a hack that makes economy class more comfortable, to show us something where they got better, a full row or a full exit row or something like that. Every person at some point was able to manage them getting, or would manage themselves getting a full row in economy. I was especially impressed by Steven's hack, where he showed us how to make soft butter out of the ice cold cubes of butter that they serve in the back of economy class. And he did that by putting it underneath his on top of his hot dish. I've flown economy class. I don't even want to know how many hours I spent in the back of airplanes in my life. I've never once thought about doing that. And so to me, that was like, you should almost get double score
That's a
for
good
this,
one.
Stephen. But
I'm
unfortunately,
I'm pretty sure I should, yeah.
yeah. So, and so we also had show us your savoir faire. It's up to the contestants to impress us with your know-how and creativity in how you get around the world. Show some creative way that you use points, some creative way. We actually gave Stephen savoir faire points for that butter hack. We gave
That's how much we loved it.
we loved it. I mean, Mary and I are still talking about it. We gave Greg points for using his Amex Platinum Equinox credit to get himself a free massage in New York before he even took off. And what was Nick's? Does anybody remember what Nick's savoir faire points were? I know he got.
I'm pretty sure Nick didn't earn any bonus points for that.
It could be.
No, it was upgrading. There was a certain upgrade that you did on AirAsia that got
right.
you
AirAsia.
speedy immigration.
Right.
Nice.
He spent $19 and he got
Yeah.
a upgrade. He got fast. We not only did he get an upgrade, but he got a fast track immigration, fast track check-in, and he got his own bus across the tarmac. And was it Jakarta, Nick?
I don't even remember to tell you
Somewhere.
the truth where it was. It was
Yeah.
maybe Seoul. I can't remember.
So everybody got
yeah.
2 points there. Now this is when we start to diverge because not everybody got either of the last two categories. One was called Making Friends with Fido. This is courtesy of Carrie Yoder and her fine young dog Maxwell. The idea was that each contestant was going to have to at some point relax with a dog. Oh, there's Maxwell right there. Oh, Maxwell was called up to the stage to present this one. Greg,
now
of course,
messing with the computer.
did hedgehogs and meerkats in Tokyo.
A close relative of the meerkat.
Stephen made friends with a terrific young cat named Mustaches in Hanoi, was it? Bangkok?
I named
That
it
was in
Mustache.
Ho Chi Minh.
Oh, or Ho Chi Minh City. Okay.
Mhm.
And Nick did
He
Nick.
hates animals.
In a
Oh.
mess.
And Nick unfortunately never found an animal that would get close enough to
Right.
let him
They
pet
just
you.
ran away.
So Nick did not get that.
No.
The last extra credit category is learning lessons from a local. And the idea was that each contestant would learn something about local culture by interacting with a local. Nick had a marvelous series of video updates where he and a friend hit Taipei, and Nick learned how to order both bubble tea and dim sum in Chinese, and he was fearless in his get up and go and his pronunciation. At one point, it led to both the waiter in the dim sum restaurant and his friend trying to correct his pronunciation.
Same time.
Which is a good sign, I think.
Yeah, anybody who hasn't watched the reel should certainly do it. It's terrific. It's really great. Greg did a whole sushi class with a Michelin-starred chef in Tokyo, and learned how to make sushi, and actually did it very well. I thought your sushi looked beautiful.
I
Greg.
would have eaten it.
It was good.
Stephen,
Romania screwed me.
Oh, that would have
Stephen
counted.
unfortunately
Well,
did
to be
not.
fair, the weather screwed me, so.
Fair.
So out of the extra credit, Greg gets 10 points total, Stephen gets 8 points, and Nick gets 8 points. We also had a encouragement for everybody to keep their journals up to date. The idea was that if you posted daily in both your blog journal and in your video journal, and you did it the entire time, Nick had a harder task than you guys did because he had to do it for 15 days or 14 days or whatever. You would get 5 bonus points. If you missed just once, you would get 0 bonus points, but you wouldn't lose anything. If you missed more than once, an increasingly dire set of circumstances would affect your score. Nick was a champ, updated the whole way through promptly. Well done, punctuated correctly.
All 17 days.
All 23 days.
Keeps getting longer. Still not home.
Stephen did the same, to no one's surprise. I mean, if anybody was going to knock that one out of the park. Greg, Greg, unfortunately, what happened on that one, Greg? You ended up without Wi-Fi, or you were putting it on
I had a whole day of flights I had 2 long flights with no Wi-Fi on either one of them, and yeah, it just
Did it
didn't
happen to
happen.
be the one where you had 2 wine tastings in a row? I wonder.
Oh, no
Don't think so.
Wi-Fi.
No Wi-Fi.
So Nick and Steven both get 5 points. Greg does not lose any points, but he does not gain any points. So up to this point now, Nick and Steven have 13 points. Greg has 10. Okay. Now, the last thing that we talked about, and we'll have to wait to get till next a little bit later, but each person had sort of a trash talk brag at the beginning, something that they felt particularly confident about doing that was going to be their personal mission. And by successfully completing it, they would get 3 points. So Stevens was that he thought as he already said, he was going to beat Greg by 2 days and Nick by 4 days. Part of that did come through. True, he beat Nick by 4 days. Unfortunately, he did not beat Greg by 2 days. So Steven gets a 0. Greg thought he was going to be the fastest to complete all 15 qualifying airlines, and he in fact was doing it in less than a week. So Greg gets 3 points. Nick's remains to be determined. Nick felt like he was going to be able to visit the most cities and win the Audience Choice Award. He did indeed visit the most cities. He had 6, Greg had 4, Stephen had 2. So that part of it is true. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with the audience vote, which is closing in about half an hour, to see if he wins his.
Get those votes in.
Yep. So currently going into the best of, it's sort of tight. It's neck and neck. Greg has 13 points. Stephen has 13 points. Nick has 13 points. So we're going to go through.
We don't do these things on purpose. This is just how it goes.
Right.
So in terms of best of, we have a few categories. We'll quickly go through them. There's only one person that can win each best of award, and each winner gets 2 points. So it's only one, and it's 2 points. So there's 20 points up for grab now. The first is the best hotel of the trip. This is the only one that Carrie and I disagreed on when we actually had to go to our second choices. The nominees were Greg had a lovely stay right at the end of the Conrad Tokyo. One of people's the most highly acclaimed points and miles hotels in Tokyo. Stephen had his nominee was the Intercontinental. Was it at Athene in Bucharest?
Athene, I think Athene Palace, Bucharest.
Athene Palace. And you can quickly describe what was the upgrade that you got there?
So I booked just like a basic room using a 3-night certificate, and I got an upgrade to what they called a junior suite. It was almost more like a regular suite because there was a separate living room, but there was no door separating the living room and bedroom area. And because I have a lounge membership through IHG membership rewards, through IHG milestone rewards, sorry, I was able to get lounge access and free breakfast there because I have diamond status. So it was a fantastic stay despite not having ambassador status with Intercontinental.
Did you put any food from the lounge in your backpack for the next flight?
I didn't know. I think I might have taken a bottle of water, but I didn't take any food with me.
Oh, okay. Okay, good.
Another way to melt butter is stick it in your backpack.
And then Nick's nominee was the Canopy in Xi'an, which is a Hilton hotel brand. That I actually had never seen the inside of one until this trip, and both Greg and Nick stayed at one. They were both kind of wacky. They were, I mean, in a cool way. They were kind of fun. and Carrie actually voted for Nick #1. So Carrie, you say what you liked
That
about the canopy.
that boxing ring is just so quirky and weird. I liked it.
Hard to beat that.
That's
Hard to beat that.
that's
I
it.
agree.
It is the first hotel I've ever seen with a boxing ring in it.
Hey.
Uh,
Yeah.
my vote, I actually had Steven #1 and Greg #2, specifically because I thought Greg, one of the qualifications for all of these awards is that you had to show us on video. And I thought Steven did a better job of showing us the Intercontinental Hotel on video than Greg did. So I had Steven as #1. Carrie had Steven as #2. So the winner with 2
Huzzah.
points is Steven.
Thank you.
Pen.
So now, what's the next one? Best
All
flight?
right. So next category, we've got best flight. So our nominees here were 2 Etihad first class apartments, one for Greg and one for Nick. But as Nick admitted in our team meeting today, he had sort of a slightly more limited service because he had the evening flight, whereas Greg had the daytime flight and he got a more amplified service, which was one of the highlights of his trip, so he says, with 2 wine tours, delicious food. Um, and then Steven's nomination was the Garuda business class, which he's also referenced this in his summary as being his trip highlight as well, upgrading to that Garuda business class. For this one, I mean, hard not to select Greg's Etihad apartments with the Armani pajamas and the 2 different wine tastings. So Greg wins best flight. The Etihad first class apartments from Paris to Abu Dhabi, right?
So
Abu Dhabi, yeah.
So 2 points.
Yep.
And it was actually just this morning we were tossing back and forth who should win between Nick and Greg because they both took the same flight, just in opposite directions. And then just this morning in the team meeting, Nick said,
You keep throwing
because
yourself under the bus.
I
actually didn't have as good an experience as Greg did because I took the evening flight.
It was true. It was true.
So, well,
if you have a choice between the 2, you want the daytime flight. There's no doubt. Still like the jammies. I'm happy with the jammies, but yeah, the food and fun were probably increased on the daytime flight.
Right.
So then let's see, what do we have next? Best local food experience. We had some fun ones here. For Greg's nominee was sushi lessons and then lunch in Tokyo, which looked delicious at the fish market there. Nick's nominee was bubble tea and dim sum in Taipei and learning the local language and how to order bubble tea and dim sum, which was hilarious. Again, you should watch it if you haven't already. And then Stevens he got to go out in Ho Chi Minh City and get a steaming bowl of pho and a hot stone massage. They were not at the same time.
Or the same place.
Had you done it at the same time at the same place, that would have been a video update worth checking out. But so the winner, and this was really hard between the sushi lessons and the bubble tea and dim sum. But in the end, we went with Nick's bubble tea and dim sum. Simply because of the language element and the fact that I mean, when Aaron and I were watching it, we were just cracking up. It was so much fun to watch. So we loved that. We love that local food experience.
Thank you, Sharon.
So Sharon, yeah. So Sharon actually gets the point and Nick gets the point. Sharon is Nick's friend. Yeah. So then, Carrie, who won best video update?
All right, so best video update. There were so many good videos to choose from. But our 3 videos that we decided to go with were, I have to remind myself what it was. All right, it was Greg's mystery animal at Harry's Hedgehogs that he was literally petting as he couldn't figure out what it was. And then, believe it or not, Nick's hotel laundry how-to is still the most viewed video of the entire challenge so far on Instagram. Everyone appreciated learning how to do laundry in your hotel room. And Steven's reunion with truffles, which I think is like the second most viewed video now. Everybody loves seeing someone reunite with their dog. And the winner, we decided, goes to the meerkat. Too funny.
Meerkat? Meerkat?
You were literally petting it, not knowing what on earth this little
Its back was
circular
to
little...
me and its head was like hidden. Finally, it turns around. I'm like, oh, it's
turns
a
around. So that one wins best video update.
So 2
All
points
right,
for
Tim.
Greg. And then lastly, oh no, there's actually 2 more that we have to award. Best selfie with a frequent miler hat on. The fun thing about this is Steven actually didn't leave with a frequent miler hat. But luckily, he had a reunion with his 2 buddies in Copenhagen, and they had a frequent miler hat. And so Steven has gone around. How many of Thomas Danbo's trolls have you seen, Steven?
I was trying to work it out recently. I think I'm up to about 50 of them now. So like
Wow, I didn't realize there were that many.
And oh yeah, no, I mean he's created about 150 worldwide, so I've still only
Wow.
seen like about a third of them or so.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm at about 50.
So you were
Cool.
able, and what was the one in Copenhagen named Green
That was
George?
Green George, I think it
Green
was.
George. Okay, so
George.
Steven, and you can see these. We have a recap post on the blog that you can see all of these videos and all of these selfies. So Steven had one that is in front of the Thomas Danbo troll, and it's an excellently composed shot. Well done, Steven.
Thank you.
Nick has one in front of the Christmas markets in Vienna, which is a lovely shot as well. And then Greg was, let me look here. What was Greg's? Oh,
Greg is like peeking over a wine glass.
Oh yeah.
Greg was about
Man, you got a lot of mileage out of that wine tasting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen Greg's selfie, check out the post. It's pretty fun. So the winner of best selfie with a frequent miler hat on, partially because of the ingenuity that it took to do it without a frequent miler hat, is Steven.
Steven
So
wins.
Steven
That thing to
somehow
like
didn't
hang the
bring
hat off of the
a
toe or
hat.
something.
Yeah.
Looking back at it now, I'm like, how did the troll not end up with the hat? That's
True.
swing and a miss.
So 2 points for Steven.
Well done.
All right. So now we've got best airport activity. And this is one of those categories I don't think you guys knew we were like secretly paying attention to. We didn't advertise what these extra credit things were going to be. Greg, but all of you happened to do something fun in an airport. Greg visited Japan Airlines first class lounge, which is cooler than it sounds when I just introduce it that way, but it has like 3 different ambiances you can try out. The red suite was Greg's favorite, which looks like a little speakeasy inside. They even have shoe shining. So that was a really neat thing to watch. Nick went to the Etihad first class lounge in Abu Dhabi where he got a free massage that he actually liked. He said, despite I don't usually like massages, which
No,
just
no, I don't.
but I'm glad
Massage.
he liked that one, and he got his free 15-minute massage. Sounded wonderful, looked wonderful. Stevens, totally different direction, went to the Butterfly Gardens in Singapore in the Chiang Mai airport. Seems like every challenge, Steven finds a way to like find a new thing to do in the Changi airport, which is really neat. Makes me want to visit the airport. So our winner of the airport activity, of course, is going to be Steven with the creative twist on the
Oh wow. Okay.
airport activities with the Butterfly
I
Garden.
thought it was going to be Nick getting a massage because it actually sounds much better, but okay.
Well,
Watch
maybe
out, Steven. I threw
Well,
you
myself
or I
under the
would-
bus a
Steven.
couple times already.
that was another one Nick might have sabotaged himself by admitting that he usually isn't about that. But yes, well done, Steven.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so now we have, those are the ones that we're awarding. There's 4 more best ofs that will simply be, that are just based on quantitative stuff. So let's quick go through those and then we'll get on to the important stuff. Cheapest flight. We had, I think, in total, 70 individual legs on this trip. And the cheapest single leg, does anybody want to guess who had the cheapest flight before we
I'm I'm gonna say Nick with his either with his KLM or with his Tarom flight.
Greg, what do
I
you
would
think?
guess the same.
Yeah, that seems likely.
So you're both correct. It was Nick with his KLM flight between Jakarta and Kuala Lumpur.
Ah.
That cost him a grand total of $54 and was $2 cheaper than second place, which was
Nick.
Nick's Wizz Air flight between Copenhagen and
First one.
Bucharest, it looks like. Oh, actually, but that one wouldn't have
That was
worked
That
because
was
before I
not
had
you
qualifying.
to book
missed,
it
so it
again.
ended up being
Yeah.
$156, so never mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So 2 points for Nick. Least distance traveled. That is whoever the person who was able to complete their entire trip in the shortest distance. Greg won that one, as he already said. He finished with just over 31,000 miles, 31,090. Nick was in second place with 33,317 miles. And Stephen was in third with 34,620 miles. So 2 points for Greg. Most cities visited outside of airports. We've already said Nick won that with 6. Stephen had 2, Greg had 4, Nick had 6. And then the last one is most nights in a non-airplane bed. Now, this one, once it became clear that Nick was going to be taking most of the month of September in his trip, we decided that we couldn't just give the most absolute hotel nights because Nick had double the hotel nights of Steven, but his trip was 4 times as long. So we had to sort of like do a
Oh,
proportion.
wait. So we're going to change the rules now all of a sudden.
So the person who had the
It's rigged.
highest percentage of their trip spent in hotel beds or airplane beds was still Nick at 78% of his trip, barely edging out Greg the Frequent Miler at 70%. So what that leaves us to, after all of the extra credits and the journal and the personal mission and everything, Stephen is in first place at 21 points. Nick and Greg are tied for second at 19 points. So it is
Nerve
Really
wracking.
close. Wow.
a dead heat. Okay,
This is-
so now for the big categories, the SAS categories, as we like to call them. So, Carrie, want to start with speed?
I just realized we should have made the audience vote Y for like you, so it could be sassy, speed, affordability, style, and you.
Oh,
All right. Anyway, we didn't do that. So instead, we're going to start with speed. So our winner for speed obviously was Greg, spending just 9 days traveling. So Greg gets speed.
and
I
who
think we
was
all
in
knew that
second
already.
place?
Second place, shocking, was Steven at only 10 days. And Nick was third place with 12 days. We've made many jokes about how long Nick's been gone, but really it was only 12 days. So
So that
Greg's
gives,
the winner.
based on the speed category, Greg gets 25 points, Stephen gets 20 points, and Nick gets 15 points. So now when it comes to affordability, Stephen came in first, spending a total cost, including the cost of including his cash cost and the reasonable redemption value of his points, and what we call the first year value that we attribute to his credit or to his certificates and credits. He spent a total value of $5,106. Nick was number 2 at $6,199. Greg, because he paid for everybody's Uber in Copenhagen, ended up at
That's why
$8,265.
Man, Copenhagen is so expensive.
it really is pricey.
So Steven gets 25 points for finishing first in affordability. Nick gets 20 points for finishing second in affordability. Greg gets 15 points for finishing third in affordability, but we still think is a really nice guy for covering everybody's Uber flight or Uber ride.
Well, everything,
And
really.
for covering all the flights too.
And really the entire trip. So
Right. All right.
So there's only two categories left: style, which Carrie and I will judge, and then the audience vote, which the audience will judge, of course. But just to update where we're at right now, Steven is in first still with 66 points. Greg is in second with 59 points. Nick is in third with 54 points. It is
Very
still
close.
anybody's ball trip.
Yes. All right. So now on to style. Is my dog too loud? If not,
Yep,
I'll keep
can't
talking.
hear it.
Otherwise,
No.
we'll toss it to Tim. Okay. So style, I'm going to read out a few highlights, and then we're going to, the same way we did it throughout the other check-ins where we have an Olympic style card, we're going to do this now for your overall trip. All right. So we're going to start with Greg. Your kind of main highlights that I want to quick summarize before we do this. Etihad Apartments, first class apartments, sushi lessons, and hedgehog petting, and the 100th anniversary Hibiki whiskey from JAL first class. Obviously, there were other highlights in there like the Conrad Tokyo, but those are kind of the three gems.
The
that I
helicopter.
wanted to
Don't forget
quick-
the helicopter.
And the helicopter, the Blade helicopter, and the Equinox. Credit for the massage. Many, many things in there to be wowed by. So, Tim, you ready?
Sure.
You need a pen.
No, I got one. I got
Okay.
mine. Why don't you
lend you
why don't
Annie's.
you do your score and then say why you gave Greg that score, and then I'll do mine as opposed to doing it at the same time.
Okay.
That way because it gives you more time to add.
Ooh,
Whoa!
wow.
I
That's-
mean,
holy
That's a
Carrie,
nice score.
what the
Right?
heck? We're just passing out tens around here?
I just don't see how you wouldn't give Greg a 10. I mean, as an afterthought, we said helicopter. That wasn't even like the first thing. That wasn't even the first thing that we mentioned was the helicopter. So, I mean, it not only did he focus on a few local experiences to make sure he wasn't just spending all his time in airports, but he also did great things in airports and in planes, and so he did the kind of travel hacking, fancy side of things, but also the thing that makes us love travel. So that's why I gave him a 10.
So yeah, wow. Geez, I mean, after seeing that score, I'm just a little woozy. So let me collect myself. So the last time I don't normally, I always feel like there's room for improvement on these things. And having done these trips before, I know how terribly hard they are to organize. And I always feel like I could have done something better. And I think Greg could have done something better in terms of getting out and doing a little more local. And he actually did a pretty good job for the size of his trip. When I was going through and looking at he actually got out and did 4 cities. Unfortunately, he got kind of screwed by the rain in Hangzhou, just like Stephen did in Bucharest. But I will say that, and this is sort of style tangential a little bit, but the biggest criticism that I was reading through of Greg's trip and the recap post, and people were saying who they voted for, was that Greg spent too much. Everybody sort of was like, well, of course his trip was best because he spent too much. But what I actually really liked about Greg's trip is I thought he did the most with his points and miles. So in terms of, if you look at what he was the fastest to complete 15 carriers, and he was the fastest to get his trip done, but he actually spent less than Stephen did on his SAS qualifying flights and only about $350 more than Nick did. And his out-of-pocket cost of cash that he spent was actually less than Nick's, even though Stephen did win that category as well. But it was all kind of in the same ballpark. So he spent a little over $4,000 in cash. That other $4,000 was he got $4,000 in value from his points and miles. And given that we're called frequent miler, I felt like that needed to be, I like the style of that. Not only that, but I'm a sucker for helicopter rides, Etihad first class, JL first class, Hibiki, and all the other stuff. So
You just happened to hit those really niche
Oh,
things
wow.
there.
yeah, so I gave Greg a 10 too. And I was going to give him a 5, but then I thought it'd be embarrassing. So having Carrie gave him a 10. So I just,
You just quick.
so let's go to Nick's score.
All right. You want to go first this time?
Well, what were the highlights that you had?
Oh, yes. Nick's highlights. Therm Bucharest. For quite some time, Nick was the only one that had done an activity, a solo activity. Obviously, there was the Thomas Dumbo troll that everybody did. But not only was that kind of the only local activity for a while, it was a really nice one, a spa, basically. Then, of course, he had the Terracotta Soldiers, the Gulang Yu Island, 2 UNESCO World Heritage Sites in a row. And if that wasn't enough, then he also hit that Etihad Apartments first class. So just as we were beginning to think, oh, he might make it as stylish as Greg, he was like, yeah, I'm gonna make it as stylish as Greg. So I'm gonna show mine.
Oh my Lord!
Also gets a 10. He gets a 10.
Oh, wow.
His fanciness was not quite as fancy as Greg's fanciness, but he did way more on the ground. And so that is something that I think we all like to see. So I loved visiting a local friend. I thought that was great. And Terracotta Warriors, I mean, who's not going to be jealous of that? So we got a 10 for Nick.
Nice. I agree with pretty much everything that Carrie said. Nick, I think, did the best job with activities, which you should have done because you had the most time, but you did. You had some terrific, you and Greg took advantage of the same Qatar business class sweet spot. That was terrific. You both did Etihad, even though, as you have admitted, your flight was not as good as Greg's. And yeah, no, totally. Where I felt like there was a little bit of a drop off compared to both Greg and Stephen was in your lodging. I think Greg and Stephen were both pretty clearly had slightly better lodging. And the thing that I thought, and I still think is most hilarious, is that you took a really slow itinerary, partially to see the world, which I can totally get on board with, partially to make sure that you wouldn't miss any flights, but you were the only person to miss a flight.
My irony there.
So if you had been competing against anybody else besides Greg the Frequent Miler, with his Hibiki whiskey and his thought ahead roll on and his
Helicopter.
Helicopter, all that stuff. I can't imagine that you would have been beaten style, but for me, you were. So I
Can't see it.
Can't even see it.
Don't see it.
Oh,
No,
nine.
you actually have
Like
to
more
put it
right
in front of
your face.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
Oh,
never
back
mind.
back near your face.
Nine.
Yeah, there you go.
A 9. All right. A 9
A
for
9
Nick
is
from Tim.
fine.
All right. Now on to Steven's highlights. So a few of the highlights for Steven. Thomas Dumbo Troll, even though everybody visited that together, pretty sure that was a Steven itinerary item. Then he also got a hot stone massage and local pho in Vietnam. He gave himself his own kind of extra credit of visiting 15 different priority pass lounges, which he succeeded at. And in the very beginning of the trip, he got a few suite upgrades in a row, I think. 3 in a row, was it?
Yeah.
And so, at the beginning, I was thinking he's never going to sleep in an airport or an airplane. He's just going to sleep in beds the whole time. So I think that leads me to my 9 for Steven. I'm going to defend this a little bit. I think Steven films less than Greg and Nick. But when you look at the list of things that Steven's doing and the list of things that he has filmed, he's still got the local experiences. He's still got the upgrades, and he's still got uh, a first class and a business class flight. The only reason I'm bumping him down to a 9 from the 10 is because his first class flight was not like, an apartment with Armani pajamas and caviar. So he did fly first class, but he did not get caviar. So that's where I dinged you.
So
I will still happily take a
It was the
9.
caviar difference.
So yeah, so key point for next challenge, make sure you get caviar if Carrie's judging it.
I'll
And
bring
film
the
it.
report with me
It
just
doesn't count if you don't
Film
film
it.
it.
Yeah, and
Perhaps
film
you
it.
did get caviar. Yeah.
So I agree with pretty much everything that Carrie said. What I would add on is that I think Stephen probably overall did the best job with lodging for the first half. And for me, a little bit of and it was fun to watch, don't get me wrong, but a little bit of a style knockdown is that you did 5 full nights flying around in economy. I think we had one business flight in there, if I remember correctly.
yeah, I had the
Yeah, you had one
Charlotte
business
one, yeah.
flight. With no like time to stop and actually sleep for a night in a bed or on a park bench or anywhere. And it was pretty fun to see, like, we should actually do a time lapse of like your facial hair and your tiredness as it went down that thing. It was
You
like,
got a lot of comments on your facial hair.
I'm like,
Um,
oh, you poor guy.
I mean, to be honest, that's just what my natural progression. I really hate shaving, and so I'll normally go like 4 or 5 days without shaving. And so if you just watch me day to day, that's what I look like.
You shave for the team meetings.
But yes, I didn't get quite as much sleep as the other guys, but it was weird because I felt remarkably good. Because basically anytime I was sitting down on an economy flight, I was sleeping. And so I ended up getting a decent amount of sleep. But it's been really hard getting a decent night's sleep since I returned. I've had like kind of 2 long sleeps, but other than that, my body's kind of been attuned to getting like 2 or 3 hours
Oh
sleep
no.
at a time.
Well,
So
you
like
should
I'll
try
be
sitting
taking
up.
these like really heavy power naps in bed and then be like ding wide awake and stuff. So yeah, my
Time to
sleep
get on a
pattern's
plane.
been all messed up since then.
You need to just find the most uncomfortable chair in your hotel room and sit in there overnight, and you'll be like,
And then you'll fall right asleep. That's right. With your butter on top of a plate.
So, I mean, the other thing that I would say is that I loved your Garuda flight from what was it, from Riyadh to Jakarta?
From Medina to Jakarta.
Jakarta. Okay. I would have loved it even more if that had been your first choice,
Mhm.
as opposed to spending the money on the full flight and then. And I
Yes.
also think you probably could have been a little nicer to yourself, given that you beat Nick by almost 2K. But you didn't know that in the beginning. Who knew that Nick was going to travel for 42 days and spend all that money? So, so those are my only 2 slight knocks on your trip.
Mhm.
Everything I agree with everything Carrie said, and I think it was good overall. So I'm gonna see if I can make this show.
Oh, cool.
A 9.
So
9 is fine, as Nick says.
by my quick back of the envelope math, that means that the final style results are Greg as number 1 with 20, Nick number 2 with 19, and Stephen number 3 with 18. Barely getting edged out by Nick. And Stephen, I would talk to Carrie about that 10 that she gives Nick, because it's really until the live stream ends, that's not a final. That's not a final score.
To be fair, I genuinely can't argue that Nick shouldn't score more than I did. So, like, he definitely
Good,
deserves at least one
good.
more point than I do. So,
So we only have one component left, and that's the audience score. But it's still anybody's game here, because Nick is third with 74 points. Stephen is second with 81 points. Greg is first with 84 points. So if Stephen gets one place ahead of Greg, either he's first and Greg's second, or Greg's second or he's second and Greg's third in audience vote, Stephen will win. If Nick wins first, he gets both this and his personal mission score. So he very well, depending on where Greg finishes, might jump over Greg for the final score. So, Carrie, do you have the
Oh,
vote,
close.
the results put up?
I do.
So
I'm scrolling right now.
okay, no, I have it right here. So
Okay.
let's do second place first. So first of all, I want to say thank you to everybody who voted in this because we have well over 1,200 votes. It was a sizable sample size. And coming in second with 35% of the total votes, which would mean he would actually advance to the primary if we were doing jungle voting, was Nick at 35% and 427 votes. So that means that not only does Nick get 20 points for second place, but he actually gets a 0 on his personal mission. So Nick will end up with 94.
Good news, bad news.
Good news, bad news.
Mhm.
So it all depends it's between Stephen and Greg. One of them finished first in audience voting with 41%. One of them did not finish first with 41%. So the sassiest frequent miler, the winner of the 2024 second annual challenge. Carrie, can you see who it is?
I can see who it is. It
Who is
is
it?
Greg, the frequent miler.
Oh,
Greg wins again.
so
The envelope,
Good
please.
game.
the final score, the final score, Greg finishes first with 109 points. Steven finishes second with 96 points. Nick finishes a very close third at 94 points.
Wow.
Isn't this the
That-
exact isn't that
if
how 40K to far away? No, it was swapped.
So Nick,
Um,
if you had found a dog to pet, then we would have been tied for second. It all came
It
down to the
only,
dog.
it was all that
Hey,
dog that
dog.
ran away.
Would have, should have.
If only you chased that dog, man.
We keep
Should've chased
referencing
it
this
down.
dog that ran away, but I never shared that clip on social media, so
Oh, you didn't.
our
Oh,
viewers have no idea what we're talking about.
you'll have to wait for the deep tides. So, Greg,
Yeah.
this is your first annual challenge win since 40K to far away.
Since 40K to far away. Since
Wow,
so that was what,
is it really?
2019, I think, right?
2019.
Wow. I
Yeah,
didn't realize it was
yeah.
that long. Can
So
everybody
did you-
like this video if you would like to wish Greg a congratulations on his first win since 2019?
And if you're angry that you thought Steven or Nick should have won, like this video.
Either
And then make
way,
sure to vote for us next time.
Yeah.
So thank you everyone who voted for me, but thanks for everyone who voted in any way at all. That your participation has been fantastic. I've loved everything about this challenge, and I would have loved it even if I didn't win. My sister-in-law asked me tonight, if you win, what will you get? Bragging rights, so I'm gonna wait for that big box full of bragging rights to be shipped to me.
you'll win.
Looking forward to that.
We'll let you have a glass of the Hibiki.
Well, I was just going
Oh,
to say,
thank
so
you.
long as you don't celebrate with the Hibiki alone. So
Right. No, don't worry about that. And we should say something about the audience participants who we're
So-
going to be giving prizes to later.
Yes.
Can you go through that, Greg, actually, since you're the winner, because now it will make a little more sense in terms of how we'll be doing those audience participation votes.
Sure. So we invited audience members to help us as we planned the trip, as we did the trip, and now even at the end, we're still waiting for our final flights to get credited. We have to get all 15 of those flights credited in order to actually earn the 1,000,000 miles, which won't be awarded till January. So there's still potentially opportunity to help us. So for example, I'm still waiting for KLM, Air France, and China Eastern points to come in. And so anyway, we what we're going to do, we're each going to pick who we thought helped us the most with our challenge. And because I'm the winner of the challenge, the person I pick as who won the most will be the grand prize winner, and they'll get what is it, 400,000 SAS miles and 5 free nights with Hilton. So there's these certificates that they don't work for SLH properties, but they should work at any actual Hilton in the world, which is amazing, amazing prize.
Can I
So
quick ask you a question about those, Greg? If I understand correctly, and those do not require award space, correct, to be available because they swap for cash, or did I misunderstand that?
I think there has to be a standard room
Oh, there does
available.
have to be a
I
standard room.
think
Okay.
so. So that's about the same as award
Okay.
space being available, right?
Okay.
I think that's my understanding. And the person that the people that Nick and Steven pick will each earn 100,000 SAS miles. So great prizes all around, and obviously especially great to the person that I picked. But we're gonna wait, I guess, until we actually find out for sure that we've earned the million miles, and then announce the winners.
Yeah, there is a scenario where Greg has to revoke his win if Stephen and Nick both win the million miles and
And I
Greg
don't,
doesn't somehow.
right?
So even though we're announcing Greg as the winner, this challenge has sort of like a false finish, and then we'll actually finish it once we see what SAS does. So you'll have to kind of stay tuned for a sort of final recap wrap up uh in the new year probably.
And we've had a lot of
Yeah.
wonderful folks helping Nick, Stephen, and Greg throughout this whole process. And for those who have been helping, it behooves you to help them make sure that their flights get credited.
Right.
So if
Right.
anybody that's doing the challenge, if there's any, I'm sure that everybody will be talking about this going forward in terms of getting stuff credited. But if anybody has any tips about how to, and actually really quickly, let's quick before we go, how many airlines have each of you had credited, and what's still outstanding? That's actually
And
good.
are there things you still need help with?
Yeah.
What would you want
Yeah, that's
audience
a good
participation
question.
Yeah.
on?
Great
So I have
question.
12 credited, and I already mentioned which ones are not. The status is that I called SAS on Saturday, and the woman who answered, when I mentioned Air France and KLM, she said, "Oh yeah, those have been the most problematic overall." And she opened a ticket for all three of the ones that are missing, and she seemed confident that I should get credit for all of them, and that it would take about a week for that to happen. And I check hourly despite having alerts set on my SATS app.
Yeah. Stephen, how about you?
Oh, sorry.
Or Nick, how about you?
I
Nick.
I have 12. I have 12 so far out of the 15 also, though I do have my Air France and KLM ones credited automatically, unlike Greg and Stevens, I think. But the ones I'm missing are Vietnam Airlines. I'm a little concerned about that. I'll come back to that in a second. Air Europa, which I assume will credit at some point here, and Virgin Atlantic, which I'm also similarly somewhat concerned about, although in a different way. My Vietnam Airlines one, I'm a little nervous about that because I submitted for the retroactive credit, or tried to, and it said that there was nobody with my name listed on that flight. And when I look back at the ticket, I realized that it was like sort of reverse, like my last name was listed first. And so then I tried to submit for retroactive credit with it the other way around, and it still told me that the name didn't exist on the flight. So I don't know what's going on there, and I haven't gone back to try to figure it out yet since I've been home. So it's been a busy few days. So have not done anything more with that, but I'm curious what's going to happen there. Like I said, I think Air Europa will come through. Virgin Atlantic was a bit of a gamble because the way I booked it through Delta, and the fare class I wasn't sure was going to work the right way. When I submitted for retroactive credit on that, or again when I attempted to, it said that that flight had already been credited to another program, but I didn't credit it to another program, and I checked to make sure that it didn't accidentally get credited to Delta or Virgin Atlantic in some way, and it didn't. So I still need to follow up with SAS on that too. So I could use any help or pointers that people have in terms of dealing with those problems, that it's telling me that the Virgin Atlantic flight was already credited to another program, even though it wasn't, and the Vietnam Airlines one is saying that I wasn't on the flight, but I was. I was there. So
What
Air
were you
Europa, I
dreaming?
imagine, will show up.
All right, Stephen, how about you?
I have a dozen as well. So the three I'm missing Air France and KLM, just like Greg. That one was a little bit weird because when I tried submitting a missing claims form, it said that the route that I took for each of those wasn't eligible. And that's just certainly based on what the SAS website says. That's simply not the case. There's no excluded routes or anything like that. It's just based on what fare code and you book, and it was an eligible fare code. So I need to call up to make a claim for that. And it sounds like that's exactly the same thing that happened with Greg. The other one I'm missing is Kenya Airways. That one was a little bit weird because I tried submitting a claim form online, and it initially didn't take it properly, but it said it needed more information. And one of the things they needed was an image of my ticket. So I tried uploading that, but then the submit button just simply wouldn't submit. So I uploaded the document, but I couldn't actually process that. So I think when I call up to claim Air France and KLM, I'm just going to try claiming for Kenya Airways as well. But I still have all the documentation for that. It seems like it's all there. It hadn't declined my Kenya Airways one. They just wanted more info. So I'm fairly confident about getting all three.
All right, so everyone will have to stay tuned to see how all of this pans out. The travel portion is done. Now we have the painful computer stuff portion. But pay attention and comment if you think you might be one of the readers or inputters, commenters who contributed greatly to somebody's trip. Comment if you think you should be the person they pick. If you want a chance at that 100,000 SAS miles, 400,000 SAS miles, and 5 Hilton certs. I think that is all we have for now. Am I missing anything?
Final words, judges. You did a fantastic job. Great
Yes.
job keeping this all going and
Well done.
making it so entertaining.
Tim gets special kudos for doing all of the meticulous planning of how to score this. This time around, I pretty much focused on footage. So all that the ability to make it so calculated is really nice because we all really like each other. So we don't want to actually judge.
Right.
We want to turn it into math. So nicely done there, Tim.
And special
and we should
to
also
you as
give a
well
shout
for all
out.
the videos.
Yeah, we should also give a shout out to Kerry. One of my favorite comments by a reader, one of the contestants on their journal entries, somebody said that it was so much fun to watch their video now because they were doing such a better job of editing it than they used to. Well, like, well done, like, good job. You could put some effort into learning how to make these reels well. And we were all like, well, that's because Carrie's doing it.
We all love it. I enjoy it. So I would say make sure you subscribe because we'll probably have some kind of live event when it's time to finally wrap this thing up. So all you can do is subscribe to find out when that is. We don't know when it is until SAS tells us. So yeah, I think that's it. Thanks
And
for
in the
watching
meantime,
along, everybody.
congratulations to Greg the Freakum Miler, who is our provisional
Yes.
2024 second annual challenge.
Professional winner.
Yeah.
Thank
We
you
won't
very
print
much.
your name into the trophy just yet.
Right. Yeah, hold off
It'll
on
be
that.
it's pencil for now.
The
We'll
bragging
engrave it
rights
later.
trophy
Yeah.
is not yet mine.
Right.
I got it.
Awesome.
All right.
All right.
Thanks and goodbye,
Thanks for watching,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you.